Hi, everybody, and we are live with Jason Shockey. Jason is the Chief Information Security Officer for Cyberpoint International. Did I get all that right, Jason?
You did. Hi, Mike.
All right.
Me.
No, thank you for joining us. Really excited to learn more about what you do, and I think there's going to be tremendous value to our audiences.
Great.
I guess let's start off. What is Cyberpoint International?
Yeah, Cyberpoint International is headquartered out of Baltimore, Maryland, and we're a technical company solving hard cyber problems. So we like to say we do the complex stuff so people don't have to.
What is a hard cyber problem?
That's a good question. So, you know, a lot of my work as a CISO is education as well. So some people will try to or think they're secure, but then they'll have to go back and redo work. So starting from the start, it's making sure that, you know, the complex things that need to be secure are properly identified in the beginning. So what are you securing? So a lot of my work is education on the job, and also translation of complex concepts into understandable business terms. So those complex things are very simple once you start breaking them down, but they're complex because most of them are unknown to people.
That's pretty interesting. So so it's not really just like locking down a network. It's more than that. It's also identifying what information is important and who needs to access it. Is that correct?
That's very correct. So if they don't know what to protect, it's very difficult to protect it. Because once you start to try to protect everything, your resources are going to be dwindled away very quickly.
Wow. No, that makes sense. I have an intel background, so counterintelligence. So it really aligns with what I did for my career in the military. So, so a chief information security officer. So that's a C-suite leader responsible for the security of the organization or what you're putting out?
Both. So it's internal and external. So it would also be the physical security. So you have to take it down to layer one as well. Sometimes it's like that. There are a couple of different flavors of CISO. So if you are at a large technical firm, then you might be a technical CISO. If you're at a large, say, commercial banking firm or in the financial industry, you might be a compliance CISO. Or you might be a mix of both. Depending on what the company needs, then you can provide that value. But the majority of the time, a CISO is someone who can take those complex cyber issues or the cyber security issues and make them, translate those into the business world, the business language that people can understand.
Yep.
So you're talking about OpEx and CapEx. You're not necessarily talking about, hey, we need to implement the latest IAM or the latest PAM solution or whatever cyber tool is out there. You're abstracting that up a little bit so people can understand it at the board and the other C-suite.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, in fact, now that I think about it, I think of CISO as like IT specific, just the networks. But in reality, when I think to what I was doing at EY with audit readiness and IT general controls, the team were not just did you have like your antivirus, you know, your antivirus and your firewall and everything else like that, but you also had to have, you know, processes in place to make sure you control who has access to the systems.
That's correct.
What are your you know, policies for who gets access? How do you make sure that people are added or taken off for that? And then all the other things, the bells and whistles, how things integrate and everything else like that.
Yeah, so it definitely starts with, you know, the original question, what are you actually securing? And maybe usually it starts with the data. So where is your data? You know, I just wrote some articles on, you know, the 5 things all businesses need to understand. The biggest part of that is knowing where your data is.
Right.
And then you can say, what type of data do we have? And that what question allows you to classify that. So you can have maybe 3 general classifications: internal, non-releasable. You can have internal, and then publicly releasable. So that way you can have your classifications, and then the groups that are within your organization, you can have role-based access to actually say, yep, this group can access this type of data, and then the next group can access the lower levels of data.
Right.
So it starts with that data classification.
Yeah, there's kind of like a knowledge management piece to it.
Exactly.
Wow. That's great. I thought I was like talking to a CISSP meeting and I was not going to understand any of it. This makes great sense.
Yeah.
I can see how you're good at, you know, presenting it to clients as well.
Oh, thanks.
How, with like the Microsoft, SolarWinds, all that, how has that impacted what you guys do?
Yeah, so that's one of my specialties, is supply chain risk management from a cybersecurity perspective. So a lot of the things I do at Cyberpoint, that lends itself to third-party risk management, which I did at some previous companies. So all of those things combined kind of, make you more secure. And what that means is as a CISO, I'm responsible for controlling and protecting all of the internal data that is classified, that needs to be protected. And then when you onboard partners or you go through a merger acquisition, you have to make sure that that partner is secure as well. But there are varying degrees of security. So how secure are they? Well, that's a good question. So then you'll go through some compliance checklists, and compliance gets you to a level where you could say, okay, I know that they satisfy at least, the NIST 800-171 compliance controls, or the 853 controls to a certain level. Then you have to make an assessment based on the other elements that are out there. Okay, when's the last time they got hacked? Have they ever been hacked? Did they report it? How fast did they report it? How did they respond? What did they look like in the media when they were breached or if they were breached? So all of those things combined actually give you a good perspective on how exposed you are from your downstream risk of your supply chain risk management, which is your third-party risk management program.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we've had to do that for some of when we've partnered with some other companies where they were going to access our system or vice versa, where, even just through their ATS, their applicant tracking systems, you had to do some of those measures of compliance to make sure that we weren't going to put their systems at risk.
Right. And one of the companies that I worked out, I took them through their IPO, and they were, a top 20 based program, or critical security controls top 20 program. And I transitioned them to a NIST cybersecurity framework and NIST 853 program, because that better aligned to the ITGC, or the IT general controls, because they were going to be under, SEC regulations now, and under SOX rules. So they go ahead.
I'm laughing because everybody said how well you translate everything into plain English, and then you just went all acronym on us.
Oh, about that?
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. You kind of you went to NIST and SOC, so no, I get it. But I think we kind of went off on a tangent there for a second. You were in the Marines, right?
I was for 20 years. Yep.
So what did you do in the Marines, and how did that lead you to be in the C-suite for Cyberpoint? Yeah,
my transition is pretty unique. So went into the Marine Corps in 1999 after majoring in chemistry at CSU Chico. And I wanted to choose something that was, science-based and that would give back to the Marine Corps, but also give back to me after I got out. Because I knew I was going to, do 20 or 30 years, however long that was going to last. But I knew that I really wanted to do something special and make sure that I could prepare myself, starting with the end in mind. You have to get out of the military at some time. So I chose IT, and I started as an IT leader, so IT operations, IT management. And my first duty station, really got sunk into me, the computer network defense. And it really latched onto that because we had, adversaries in our network, and we had tools that were supposedly supposed to find them, but we didn't find them. Someone else found them for us, and let us know. So that really hooked me into defensive cyberspace operations, DCO. And then from there, I layered on offensive cybersecurity operations and then cyber threat intelligence. And those three things combined are actually cyberspace operations. And that landed me, throughout my career, just to keep training, keep going on my off time, in my own personal time and on the weekends, to study these things and just become better. So right around the 10-year mark. Oh yeah.
No, I'm like, you did stuff above your work.
Yeah.
That's like the golden goose of preparing for your transition, is just realizing no one's going to give you all this time. You have to make the time to do this prep, to get better, to be more relevant, to bring and earn the skills that are going to translate. So sorry for my face. I just loved that, nights, weekends, I was learning new skills. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I would pad all that time. To that point, I would pad my mornings. So, getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, which is normal for a lot of military people. But I would stick in there anytime I had free time. If I had a long commute, I would stick in, cybersecurity podcasts. I would talk about, cyber with other people. So I just immersed myself in whatever time I could find in the thing that I wanted to do. So about the 10-year mark, 2009, I said to myself, I'm going to be a CISO when I get out. So I said, okay, what is it? And I started walking it back. What does a CISO need? What certifications, experience, training, and education are needed to be a CISO? So I got a CISSP early on, and then started just applying what I learned in the cert. It's one thing to get a certification, but it's another thing to actually have the experience and then apply what you're learning. Having it on the shelf doesn't do that much. I mean, you still have the certification, but you won't be as high level of an expert than you should be if you try to apply it. So I really just applied those things to the normal Marine Corps functions, and it added a lot of value to the commanders and the units and the staff that I was with when I did that.
Yeah. And so you did that for the next 10 years?
I did. Yep. And that landed me in some pretty special places. So I worked at Northcom and paced the ascension of Cyber Command in something called the Cyber Fusion Cell. So there was me, a J2 person, and then a J3 person, or an Intel and an operational person together. And then my last 4 years was at the Cyber National Mission Force at Fort Meade, working for General Nakasone and Vice Admiral White.
Wow. So really close. It's amazing how there is a lot of relevance to what you're doing, but I still see a lot of people get out of that field and struggle because there are some differences, right? And so what I love, and what I saw David was mentioning as well, is it sounds like you did what is the dream of a lot of people that work in the transition space, which is the military life cycle transition. Realize that at some point, 20, 30 years, could have been 10 years, who knows, you were getting out of the military. And so with that being something that we all know is going to happen, you started just spacing it out a little bit of the time of time over your whole career, building the portfolio of skills, certifications, and network necessary for you to find your success right afterwards.
Very true. Yeah, I walked out from, actually, I started my CISO position in Morristown, New Jersey when I was on terminal leave. I was that hungry to get, not to get out, but to do the best that I could. Yeah. So I was really active in my transition for sure, for early on. And
so
go ahead.
Yeah, how did you find that position?
Through the internet. So yeah. Yep, on LinkedIn.
Oh wow! No referrals. You didn't know anybody at the company.
Nope.
You just found it online. I bet you were probably read a dictionary of certifications though for
There's a few. Yeah. So the other piece that goes with that is what I tried to do was I walked it back and said, okay, I have a 3-year duty station. Put something black and white on my master brief sheet or your brag sheet. Put another certification on there. Do something that separates you, to better yourself, and then separate you from the pack. How unique are you? Because having a military, background, however many years, is very unique. There's a very small percentage of people, as you know, that serve in the military, let alone retire. So what I did was take all of those black and white pieces and, okay, now do it for a year instead of a duty station. Now look at each quarter. Now look at each month. And then what am I doing every day to get to that goal? And the biggest piece was my narration. So how was I able to, actions speak louder than words, but never miss an opportunity to explain what you're doing. And if you can't explain it, if you can't translate to people what your military experience is, then it's going to be very difficult to get a job because they'll just think there's a military person, they add a lot of value, but we're not looking for that type of person. Yeah.
How did you get over with your first company? How did you escape get past they don't have corporate experience?
So the other thing I did was I got an accounting degree about halfway through also. That helped. That helped a lot. So,
no kidding. I'm just laughing. Oh, by the way, I also got an accounting degree. I mean, when you think about it, how relevant accounting, the whole audit mindset is to what you want to do, that definitely makes you stand out. So you have an accounting degree. And really background. What kind of company was it?
A specialty insurance company. Yeah, so they did admitted and non-admitted. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's to have the accounting degree and unique IT experience, IT cyber background, to have that together has got to be fairly unique.
It is. And that's part of some of the types of CISO. So the majority of CISO positions are non-technical. Now, that doesn't mean the person's not technical. That just means the position they're looking at looks at, operational expenses, capital expenses,
Right.
structure, results, reporting to the board, reporting to the public.
Right.
It's not necessarily, they do. Sometimes we roll our sleeves up and get down into cloud security and things like that, or data governance and data protection. But a lot of it is you have a team that does that. Can you actually lead that team to get results when the company needs it? And then can you actually use your voice to explain what they did and why it's relevant to the business? You're not just doing cybersecurity for cybersecurity's sake. You're doing it for the business purpose.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, absolutely. I mean, no, there's no expectation that, as a CISO, if you're at a point for your company where you're writing code, like something's wrong. So you hire the right people.
Right.
But no, that makes a lot of sense. And when you explain it that way, that's fantastic. And I love the fact that you thought to go get an accounting degree and not a degree in leadership or, like some of these other really soft degrees that don't differentiate you. So, okay. So I'm excited about this part.
Oh, great.
What is your day like?
Oh, yes.
9 to 5, 2-hour lunch.
That would be very interesting if we did have that. So the majority of my day, it almost never ends, but you definitely have to take it in stride. So a lot like the military hours, a CISO is going to deal with many things as far as technical items that are occurring. You might deal with an incident response, in the morning, and then that's going to go on for days. And while that's occurring, you might have to prep for the next board meeting. So you have a lot of, things that you're juggling in the air. All of those you have to produce results on. So a lot of it is time management and making sure that you're tracking them appropriately with some sort of tool. I mean, you can use Excel if you want, but it's project management, or I shouldn't just say just project management. Project management is a large piece of it to make sure that you allocate your time appropriately to each of those things that you're juggling.
So, so I'm assuming you're not just on the East Coast, so you've got different time zones?
We do.
So does your day still start at 4 a.m.?
It does, yes. So, yeah, I do. So, yeah, I'll get up and, lifelong learning is a part of that, where I have to stay up to speed on emerging threats, emerging technology. So in the morning when I get up, it's a workout to make sure that, you get the mind straight, but then you're digging into different, old concepts to make sure you keep the fundamentals, but make sure you also look to the future a little bit and pick your eyes up to then take that strategy and apply it to your business. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of my day job is making sure that the policies that I'm writing are actually actionable down at the tactical level.
Right.
Because if the policies that are being written at the company level, at the corporate level, don't extend all the way down and there's not a critical path for people to actually execute those things, when I go to explain to the board or to the public that we are secure, there's going to be breaks and gaps in those pieces. So that has to be written appropriately in order for us to actually carry out our daily functions. So when there is an incident or there's a breach and we have an incident response, we can appropriately actually, action it and respond to it instead of react to it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So 4 a.m., check some emails real quick, get a workout, and then you're doing some lifelong learning.
Yep.
What time are you officially in the office, kind of responding to emails, sending emails, Zoom calls, whatever? Yeah,
so the meetings will start mostly at 8 or 9. So between 6:30 and 8, 9-ish, that gray area there is when I'm sending emails. Okay. So I usually start between 7 and 8 a.m. and then that'll go until maybe 9 or 10 at night sometimes. So a lot of time, yeah.
I ask this question specifically because I want to set expectations, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot of expectations for people getting out. I want to be an executive. I want to be in the C-suite, and they don't realize that the amount of work it takes not only to get there, but once you're there to stay there.
Exactly.
And a 12 to 14 hour day, 5 to 6 days a week is normal, is what I'm seeing.
Yes.
A 60 to 70 hour work week for these types of roles is about the norm. You have to start early, especially for multiple time zones.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I always ask, and I'm glad you put the end time there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing if you have to go do something, it's not an issue. You're not necessarily clocking in and out. You're not billable to a client or anything like that for the most part, right?
Right. Now, sometimes I do perform virtual CISO work for some of our customers, but that is as long as it's not an incident response, then
Right.
It's okay and it's canned.
Yeah, and I can see that, especially when you talk about incident response.
Yep.
If something happens, they're gonna have if it's this or more, call Jason.
Yep.
and like I know, like, someone just hacked our network or hacked a client's network, or we've got this anomaly. Like, you don't want to wait 4 hours later, 6 hours later, like, call me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what I'm here for. So I get that. So we've got that, 7 or 8. So we've got that 12, 14-hour workday. You talk about writing policy, right? What's involved in writing a policy? How much time goes into one policy?
So it would be, I would say, a week's total worth of work if it were going to sit there. Now that's taking in all of the other policies that are going to be written off of that master policy, to include the incident response and everything that the teams are going to be doing down at the tactical level. But it also takes a lot of time to actually understand the business strategy. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not aligned with those policies, with the business goals, then mm-hmm. you're just going to see a divergence of those. Obviously, those two, it's going to be diverged. But when it's going to be glaring when you go to the quarterly enterprise risk management board meeting and you start to explain things, and they're going to look across the table and say, well, how come that's not matched? How come that's not nested into what the COO is doing or the CFO is, his project or her project? So it's going to be very obvious that you didn't take the time to actually nest those things together.
Which brings in stakeholder management.
Yeah, true.
Something that we have to become very familiar with when we leave the military.
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing that you touched on a little bit earlier about, how did I survive the first, year, 18 months in that company, is that you have to take what you've learned in the military and use a different vernacular, different type of language, because they don't speak military. And, I dropped into some, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. I dropped into NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. On the tech side, everybody's going to know what NIST is. On the business side, people are going to know what SOX is. Mm-hmm. But if you throw those things out and it's a military term, they're not going to understand what you're talking about. So just tweaking that language a little bit, or maybe moving your perspective just to translate and have some empathetic delivery, it will go a long way.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Another aspect of this is I've found that a lot of our staff roles in the military, mm-hmm. A lot of people want to focus on highlighting their command roles, and they want to say they're a C whatever or a senior executive or whatever. But I've found that a lot of the staff positions have been easier to translate and have brought about some transferable skills that paid huge dividends getting out. Being a sergeant major on a staff, either at a J2 or a G3 or whatever, mm-hmm. you don't, number one, you don't really have the authority. I had to learn that, but you also have to get, even though you can technically put out an order through the 3, like, everyone's going to fight you 24/7 if you don't go around and talk to people ahead of time, listen to what their concerns are, get that buy-in as a group, and so, which is something that I thought I've been blessed that helped prepare me for the private sector. And I'm guessing when you said J2, J3, it did the same for you.
100%. So identifying, the influence network within whatever company you're in is vital. And if you don't tap into that and be a part of that, not just to admire it, but you have to, be an influencer yourself. Those types of skills, those soft skills that you learn at a staff are completely critical to your success on the outside once you transition. And the other piece also is making sure that you can identify those people, because it's not necessarily going to be the chief operating officer. It could be an auditor, that's been there for 8 years or 9 years or 10, however long. Identifying those people and working with them to communicate So if you're not, working on your people skills or the communication skills is critical to success on the outside.
I just got it. You made me think about the we used to call the person in tennis shoes, the civilian employee that's been there for 20, 30, 40 years in the military that you had to go talk to because otherwise it was just going to get lost.
Yes.
And to see that in organizations in the private sector that aren't as hierarchical, you're right. You may have to go to this person right here because they're the one that knows how to navigate these waters. Also the one that knows who they can go to and say, nope, we don't do that.
Right.
And it makes everything 10 times more difficult. So that's fantastic. And also a lot of people don't, this is crazy to me, but having worked at EY, the people I always wanted to be friends with were the EAs because they managed the calendars of all the people I needed to speak to.
That's right.
So when we were still in the office, I would bring them treats, make sure to stop by and see how they were doing. And it wasn't because I wanted anything. I mean, obviously I'm going to be genuine to everybody, but I think a lot of people overlook who really can make things happen in an organization. You're right. It's not always, obviously the C-suite leaders have it, but there are other people that those relationships really can make a difference.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I learned very early on is the difference between formal and informal power and how much that informal power, you could say, has an influence over the organization.
Yeah.
So it's good to actually communicate. Well, genuine, as you said, that's a great word that I always use for myself and to explain what exactly I'm doing when I talk to people. Just be yourself. They say to do that in interviews when you're getting out as well. Be yourself. And when you're talking to people, be yourself. Your genuine self will get you so much farther than trying to act like something to get something.
If only we get people to realize that on LinkedIn as well.
I know.
Just be your professional self. Don't be your Facebook self.
Right.
But, just be authentic, and that's what resonates with people.
Right.
So we kind of got off track again. Sorry. Marine career, accounting degree in the middle.
Yeah.
All the certs, all the experience. You went to this specialty insurance company as a CISO. Did that for how long?
18 months.
And then
came down to Columbia, Maryland, or Baltimore, Maryland, to work with Carl and Vicky at Cyberpoint International.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And how long have you been at Cyberpoint International?
About 4 months.
And how big is Cyberpoint?
So there's about 70 employees right now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but we do the missions that we do. Yeah, we fight above our weight, you could say.
I love it. What type of clients do you work with?
Also, so we work with the military and also the intelligence community, and also work with commercial entities. So a lot of big banks, and then construction companies as well. And that's one of the
companies.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about cybersecurity is that tech is tech. So the same technology that we use in the military is the same technology that other corporations are using, whether they're a bank or whether they're a construction company or the local convenience store. Everybody has ones and zeros flowing through something that you can touch if you're a cyber operator.
No, I can see it. I mean, I know, again, being a counterintelligence professional, you think about the Internet of Things and ways you can access. It just was kind of interesting to me when you mentioned the DoD, the IC, banks, and the construction companies, and you don't really think about what kind of tech or what does a construction company need to secure aside from PII type stuff for their employees?
Yeah, so just that everybody has data to certain ranges. So that internal data, it might be something that, it could be a contract that they don't want anybody to see. I mean, I would imagine they don't want anybody to see any of their internal contracts. So,
yeah, and stuff like that.
Yep.
Interesting. I would have never thought. I just didn't think that way. I love having these conversations. Okay, so we've got a lot of IT people that are going to dial in. Right? Okay. They're going to watch this. They want to be a CISO.
Yep.
What does a general IT or mid-level cyber professional have to do to get there at some point? What's your advice?
So I would say at a general sense and a general manner of saying this, you're going to do the job that you want for free for a pretty long time. So I was doing CISO type functions, but not getting paid like a CISO or looked at like a CISO. I started doing it in the military just to add additional value. One of the things that you could do is, I started a company also when I got out of the military, mycyberpath.com. And the reason I did that was in 1999, I looked at what I wanted to be at the end of the career that I had in the military to then, project myself out. There were no paths like the question that you're asking. So the reason that I made mycyberpath.com was to show people which roles are out there, which certifications, experience, training, education to get to achieve whatever role that they wanted to end up with. But the very key thing that I found over the past 20 years in working in cybersecurity is that each of those work roles that you'll see in the NIST NICE framework or CyberSec, they all have different personalities, different personality types. So what I did was I took the big 5 personality traits and applied them to each of those roles, and then made an algorithm that actually matches a person's personality traits to those pathways. And then it shows them the certifications, experience, training, and education to pursue relative to that matched role. So, go ahead.
You show them how to write a resume to reflect their military cyber experience or IT experience to what the private sector is looking for in those roles.
So that is a piece that we leverage our partners for. So we do a very specific thing. We'll show you the framework on how to get there from start to finish or wherever their start is to cybersecurity mastery. But we have partners that would leverage these pathways to then help people say, here's how you write your resume. So we want to, we're looking to partner with any of those organizations that do that to be an added feature for their users.
Awesome. Sounds like something that's needed. I know a lot of people that get out and they just are IT with a clearance.
Right.
And
help, but there's a little bit more left.
Yeah. I mean, you could do more. You could market yourself a little better. Maybe opportunities in the private sector that are better paying, that are, give you a different flexibility than just going back and doing the same thing because of your clearance. Right. You need the right certifications. You need to market yourself appropriately. You need a network to help open those doors in some cases, or you just need a rock star background like yours, and they accept offline online.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. I'm definitely going to have to check it out. So I guess I have 2 questions for you, if you don't mind.
Please.
One would be, well, I guess let's start with the first one. If anybody that's transitioning has questions for you, do you mind if they reach out?
Please, I welcome that, because just a couple of years ago, I was in the same spot as these vets that are getting out. I would be happy to help them translate their resume, find ways to actually pick out the pieces that might be most relevant for the job that they're looking for. One piece of advice that I gave myself was, I looked at a CISO position descriptions over, 15 years of time and how they moved, changed, which certs were they asking for, what kind of experience. So then I just took those and said, okay, what pieces in this job that I'm about to start at this duty station can I do to position myself to have that bullet, which is going to be authentic and genuine, that I can say 10 years from now, I did this. And that might be application development, it might be, cyber operations, it might be one of those bullets, but make sure that those are lined up together.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing. I'm just laughing in joy hearing someone thinking about their transition 10 years in advance.
Oh, nice.
like that, it's just mind blowing when you think about it. And then I guess the other question would be is, for anyone transitioning, what would be your number 1 piece of advice?
I would say start early. But if you can't start early, if you're, 6 months is enough time, it's going to be a little bit more compressed, obviously, but it would really, it's going to take a lot of effort, but they can do it based on the background being in the military. It's going to be, I think, networking is huge. You're going to walk into a position that you think you like, just based on the title of it, but it might not be what you're looking for. So one of the things that I use even today to guide myself on positions and roles and jobs is the 4 C's of job quality by a man named Rich Mason. You can find him on LinkedIn. I mentioned him in my LinkedIn profile, but those 4 C's kind of tell you how to characterize what you might be walking into. Some of them is compensation, some of it's culture, some of it's the other areas that you need to look at in order to find that right position. But to answer the question succinctly, it would be start early and do it often.
Yeah, early and often. I love it.
Yeah.
And so much, I think the key point of that also is we don't know what we don't know. So we see a title like project manager.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks they can be a project manager. I would prefer people to start early and have conversations with project managers in industries where they have experience, so they can decide whether they really do want to be that, and it gives them time to pivot more effectively if they don't.
Exactly. And that comes in with the networking piece. The more people that I talk to, even today, the more I learn. So to your point of not knowing, it's just that ignorance in the true sense of the word. The more people you talk to, the more wise you become.
And these have been, that's where these days works. I did them for everybody else, and I've learned so much out of it. So it's been incredible. Jason, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We had a bunch of people sign on. I hope they do reach out. I'll definitely check out My Cyberpath, and I'll recommend it to others.
Great.
I think it sounds like it's a resource that many people should be looking at in the IT and cyber fields.
Yeah, it's an easy to use web-based platform. So thanks for having me, Mike.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.